screen here. So I guess thanks for the opportunity, first of all. I know you were hoping to hear from the broader association, so I'll be zooming down a little bit to the local level with what we're doing here, but I'll very just quickly cover, hydrogen within the Canadian context and then the regional context. Just get that in the right form. So, the opportunity for Canada, I think, as we all know, is immense. The Canadian Hydrogen Strategy was released about 2 years ago. We're working closely with the federal government to help them in implementation, participating on a range of committees. And you can just see the numbers there on the bottom. The Hydrogen Strategy recognizes for Canada, this could be a 350,000 new job opportunity, $50 billion domestic, as well as about a 50 billion export opportunity. And we're interested in both of those, certainly within our region. The global market, of course, being massive. I lose track of my trillions after a couple. So, I've seen between 2.5 to as much as $11 trillion. And Canada can be a major part of that with the strategy, talking about being the #3 producer of hydrogen globally. So, and the Alberta area is a very large producer today within the Canadian context. About 2/3 of Canada's hydrogen does come from Alberta. About 2/3 of Alberta's hydrogen comes from my region around Edmonton. And very significant part of our energy mix moving forward, as much as 30% for Canada, and for some sectors like cement, steel, mining, long haul trucking, very significant. And we have all the ability to pursue this opportunity, whether it's our feedstocks, our innovation ecosystems, our expertise that we have. So really trying to leverage that. And I think Edmonton can really show how that can be done. And that's what we're trying to do. Again, why the Edmonton region? Just in short, we do have a very supportive policy framework, federal policies, provincial policies, municipal. Obviously, more always needs to be done in this space, but strong working relationships, strong collaboration. We don't always get that in other topics, but hydrogen's been one that's been really a shining success of how we are all working closely together to pursue this opportunity. We've got the world's lowest carbon lowest cost, low carbon hydrogen right here in our backyard. So how do we make use of that opportunity, both domestically and for export? Huge amounts of expertise. We'll talk about our carbon capture and storage expertise. That's really part of the storyline here. And our access that we have. Edmonton really has great access to 2 western ports, north-south corridors, east-west corridors, and a very strong diversified industry base. Just briefly, we do have these national, provincial, and even regional strategies. And it's really been, I'm going to say, the driving work of our industrial heartland team out of the Edmonton region that's really informed the development of provincial and federal strategies, particularly around hubs, around how do we build demand for hydrogen that we can produce in a very significantly scaled manner and a low-cost manner as well. So that's our starting point. There's a big opportunity here, and we have to continue working closely together on it. One of those enablers I mentioned is CO2 storage. I'm not sure if you've already heard a bit on this today, but our region is really the epicenter for carbon capture and storage in Canada. A number of projects have been going on now for about 7 years, Shell Quest in particular. We also have the Alberta Carbon Trunk Line that can be scaled for significant amounts of CO2 to be moved from our region to other parts of Alberta. And now we have 6 CO2 hubs that are all moving through the approval phase. So these will be open access hubs for any industries to partner with if they want to have an entity that can manage their CO2 emissions. So really helping with investment attraction. It's taken a little bit of time to get these hubs up and running, but we see 6 moving in our region. We have about 19 across Alberta. So this is groundbreaking. I don't think anywhere else in the world has these CO2 hubs at the scale and number that we have here. And this is really resulting in some world-leading investments. So Air Products, as many of you would be aware, is the world's largest hydrogen producer. They've chosen Edmonton as the location for their first net zero hydrogen facility. That was announced, the first announcement about 1.5 years ago, almost 2 years ago now. But in the fall, in November, their chairman, Sefi Gazemi, came to announce their continued investment in this region and the federal government support in the tune of the project is 1.6 billion. The SIF funding under ISET department providing 300 million, and the Alberta government through the petrochemical incentive program about 161 million. So a great example of a world-leading project in our region in Canada, and we can see more of these as well if we can continue to build demand and build the export capacity. You'll see just on this list a snapshot of all the different projects that are moving forward. This is just a few of those, but we see about $30 billion of new investments taking place in this region around hydrogen, around clean ammonia, because we have all this infrastructure in place, this history of working on world-scale projects. So we're very bullish about the hydrogen opportunity, but again, partnerships are required to move these projects forward to final investment decisions in particular. But companies like Dow choosing our region as the site for a major decarbonization effort that will really support all of their global fleet really taking place in Canada, in the Fort Saskatchewan area. So we're awaiting some final decisions on that project, but just one more example. Just on the export side, I think this group probably knows exports pretty well, but this is often not well understood by some others, is we have a great opportunity to export product to Asia. The amount of time it takes to get from Port of Prince Rupert down to Japan, South Korea, probably equivalent to what it is out of Australia, and certainly shorter than moving through the United States, through the Gulf of Mexico, and through the Middle East. So let's leverage that opportunity as well and make sure we have all that enabling infrastructure. So governments are definitely working in this direction, and hopefully we'll hear more very soon around some of those export projects, particularly around ammonia exports. I won't spend too much time on this, but really just to show again the scalability of the projects we have in our region. Air Products, well, we like to highlight that one because it is probably the furthest along in the project pipeline. Talking over time of 547,000 tons per year of hydrogen. That's 25 times larger than these other world scale projects out in Rotterdam with green hydrogen or hydrogen from electrolyzers being advanced, projects in China. Those are all really important projects. We do expect those to continue to scale. But again, the starting point is 25 times larger. So how do we make use of this product and increasingly a very low carbon or net zero product hydrogen? So what we're really trying to do in the Edmonton Region Hydrogen Hub is piggyback off of this ability to be a low-cost producer of hydrogen and look at diversifying that industrial base, diversifying the use of hydrogen beyond just the large industrial uses that are the current focus, into the mobility sector in particular. We think that's probably the next big one for our region, heavy duty trucking, and that's not just Edmonton, that's Western Canada. So really working in tandem with other partners to go beyond initial pilot projects to what we're now beginning to talk about as the next 5,000 vehicles, hydrogen vehicles that we can have on the road, largely around our region, but across Western Canada. So stay tuned for more information on that. But getting more part of that value chain here, not just mobility, but blending projects as well, and the aviation sector, freight locomotives, all sorts of really interesting applications taking place. And that's because largely we have this organized hydrogen hub in the region led by our municipalities, 5 municipalities coming together, but also the involvement of the provincial and federal governments and 2 First Nations communities. I really want to make clear that this is a different way of doing business. This involves leadership from the chiefs of our 2 of our 3 First Nations and other organizations from the region pulling together to create the vision of the future around hydrogen. And we are now the home to some of the leading pilot projects, I would say, in the world. The bottom one there is a Canadian Pacific freight locomotive, much of that work starting in Calgary, but Calgary and Edmonton both seeing that fuel cell locomotive in the market regionally, and then moving that across Western Canada over the coming months, coming years, to hydrogen fuel cell buses in Edmonton and Fort Saskatchewan. So those are going to be on the road very, very soon over the next couple of weeks, we think. They actually have arrived. New Flyer out of Manitoba were the ones that manufactured the buses. So a nice Canadian example, again, of technologies. We've got dual fuel technologies. That's what we're probably really excited about. It's not maybe the sexiest technology compared to a fuel cell, but it really allows us to move forward in a rapid manner and de-risk this technology. So on the left is some dual fuel trucks, Hydro out of Vancouver, but their platform is being used by an armored car company called Bexel at the airport. There's many other applications taking place around the airport. We're also looking at other trucking companies making use of the Hydro technology, and we have a couple local companies also working on dual fuel. So that's going to allow us to scale the technology quickly and get these, again, moving from tens and 20s of trucks into the thousands of trucks over the next 5 years. Just a snapshot of these pilot projects all right here. We're going to be, the next 2 weeks, you're going to hear a lot more in Edmonton about what's happening. We have a road show, so the trucking companies are going to get more familiarity with fuel cell vehicles, dual fuel vehicles. About the buses I've already talked about. The airport's doing an incredible amount of work on hydrogen as part of their net zero targets for 2040, so that's 10 years earlier. And everything from looking at Toyota Mirai vehicles as part of the taxi fleets and car rental fleets to working with Zero Avia, who's the world leading hydrogen aircraft company, bringing their technology to Edmonton, where they'll be testing the refueling infrastructure at our airport. So great partnerships, projects across the entire value chain, and just to really highlight, we also see some jobs associated with the hydrogen workforce. So this is some really early work we've been doing with a local company called Run With It Synthetics to do some synthetic modeling around the hydrogen workforce. And based on early projections, and this is high level modeling, yes, oil and gas workforce might be reduced by 2044. It doesn't go away, but the hydrogen workforce of the future is going to start picking up steam. And if anything, we're going to see a much larger demand for workers in the future as the hydrogen economy takes off. And we've been really mapping that out as well, across the region where these jobs are located today in oil and gas, across the Edmonton metro region, in our communities, to really show this isn't just important for, where you're producing the hydrogen, but it's where the workforce is as well. So I think that message needs to get out that, we've got a significant workforce that can play a major role in Alberta's hydrogen economy and global opportunities here as well. Next steps, just continuing to implement the Canadian, working with the federal government to implement the Canadian hydrogen strategy. We're really interested in how the issue of carbon intensity is addressed, because we can meet these international targets for carbon intensity. We're going to continue to work with the Alberta government on its hydrogen roadmap. You can see some focus there that's being placed on the natural gas utility framework. What are some of the policies that are being required there? How to continue working with the Hydrogen Center of Excellence to roll out some of their programming. And really don't lose track of this export opportunity, which is really massive and getting a lot of attention right now, and continuing to work within our hydrogen hub. One thing I'll just highlight, Prairies Canada announced some funding for us and a few other partners about a week and a half ago. And that's going to allow us to continue to build out our work on the hydrogen supply chain in the region in Alberta. That includes things like how we can support companies with their business models and making the pivot towards hydrogen, mapping out our supply chain companies and where they play a role, and ultimately looking at what additional
I think we lost your audio, Brent. On our side, it looks like you're live, but maybe your microphone. I think you're just coming toward a conclusion, actually. Not horrible luck.
Sorry, I may have lost connection there.
We got you now. It might have been your headset giving out on you, but I think we've got you.
Sorry, how much of it did you miss, I guess, is my worry.
No, you're just coming toward your conclusion. I think you figured it out.
It sounded like it went off at the very end.
Same time as us, so no, please keep going. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think it was just the next steps there that we're continuing to work with our partners, federal government, provincial government, and really focused on our supply chain work. That was an announcement last week with the federal Prairies Canada minister coming in to support some of the work Edmonton Global is doing, our transportation sector is doing on the supply chain. So we'll be working to support companies looking to pivot their business models, to better map out who's part of our hydrogen supply chain, and ultimately to focus on the workforce and what additional gaps need to be addressed. I think we feel we're pretty well covered, but there will be some gaps that will be identified, particularly as we move into things like mobility, longer term hydrogen pipelines, and some of the uniqueness around pipelines or blends of hydrogen in pipe and natural gas, and what we need to be doing to be able to work with that. So that's about it for me. I look forward to any questions you may have.
Well, that's great. Terrific flyover, Brent. Lots of information delivered succinctly. Is there any questions from any of the fellow panelists for Brent? Well, that's good. Maybe it's more of an editorial comment than anything before we move to our next speaker. I'm just struck by the optimism and expertise coming out of Alberta on this. I'm reminded of I started my own career in the oil sands longer ago than I care to admit. And I remember in those days, it really was, the world told us that it was going to be impossible to separate the oil from the sands and to create a viable business out of the whole thing. And the province, the country, and the industry all pulled together, showed the world wrong. And it's that kind of sense I get on this as well, is that there's a lot of expertise, and when we cooperate, we might actually just be able to show the world that you can create a market for hydrogen, and that, and if that's the case, then we may be on the cusp of something very exciting. So I can't thank you enough, Brent, for coming in and sharing the progress with us.
I appreciate that comment, and I think one of our messages, the world still doesn't really know that well about what is happening here. We've been looking at some reports. They talk about the U.S. being a major producer, Australia, and it's really not recognized that we have this role here. So more needs to be done to get that message out to the rest of the world. I think some of the experts may understand it, but at a more general level, other countries, other governments aren't really aware of what Canada can provide to them. So looking to help with that.